Welcome into Austin Now, live on the Fox Local app on this Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. Of course, the way we have started all of the shows over the last 3 weeks, and of course this has been going on longer than that, day 41 of the government shutdown, and it looks like we are headed to this thing finally coming to an end, but it's not over just yet. We just got an alert, the Senate approving a bill to end the shutdown. It now gets sent to the House, which they will vote on, and then after it gets sent to the House, and if that passes, then of course President Donald Trump would have to sign on it for final approval. But just within the last 24 hours, we were getting word that this was something that was going to be possible. Basically, a series of Democrats going to the other side of this, agreeing to move forward with it. Of course, over the last 41 days, we have heard from the Democrats that their main concern being the Obamacare subsidies, which are set to expire. They wanted to, of course, vote on that. There is no guarantee from Speaker Mike Johnson on the Republican side that is something that they will vote on. He was asked about it earlier tonight. But this government shutdown, it looks like phase, I guess, 1 of 3 of this getting signed is on its way. This has, of course, been a shutdown that's lasted since October 1st. We have seen a lot of people affected by this all over the nation, specifically here in Texas. 3 million people on SNAP benefits. We've seen air traffic controllers not getting paid over the course of this time, as well as federal workers that have been furloughed. So just hundreds of thousands of people within the federal government being affected by this. But it looks like all things are headed to this. That final vote was 60-40, which really broke this stalemate that we've seen going on for 6 weeks now. I want to read you a quote from House Speaker Mike Johnson, who urged lawmakers to start returning to Washington, quote, right now, given the shutdown-related travel delays. He said, quote, we have to do this as quickly as possible. So trying to get this thing moved forward. It looks like they will vote on that on Monday. So the shutdown, 41 days we had been involved with this. We brought in Texas Democrat, U.S. Representative Lloyd Doggett into studio on Friday. We spoke to him right before the weekend. He was just flying back in from Washington, D.C. Oddly enough, he said he was affected by this government shutdown, having a series of delays just for him to fly back from Washington, D.C. here in Austin, where, of course, he is from. So in talking with him, we posed the question, do you believe both Democrats and Republicans have to share some blame here? He did say that he believed that it's not so much blame that the American people should be concerned about. It should be more about, can they get a deal that makes sense for everybody? He then went on to call Speaker Mike Johnson a, quote, errand boy for President Donald Trump. He said if this thing is to get to the finish line and for everybody to agree on it, he believed President Trump was going to have to get involved. And then 24 hours after that, we were getting word that the Republicans were going to get enough votes for this. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer from New York coming out saying this is not what he wanted. He was going to vote no. Bernie Sanders, the independent from Vermont, saying the same thing. So there are a lot of people upset with the Democratic Party for having this thing go on for 41 days, and the reason being the Obamacare subsidies, and that's not part of this. So a lot of people saying, why did this go on for so long if you're not getting what you had been fighting for this entire time? Now, there could be a handshake agreement, and this could, of course, be something that's voted on or talked about later on, but this will extend things into January, so things are moving forward, of course, and we'll see what ends up happening ultimately to the Obamacare subsidies. There's been, I'll read the people that have kind of gone to the other side of this to help this move forward, just so you're aware. We've got Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, who's been very vocal about this, Nevada Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, and Jackie Rosen also voted yes. All other Democrats, including, of course, who I just mentioned, Chuck Schumer, voted against it to ultimately make this thing 60-40. Going back here locally now, this sounds boring when I say it at first, right? TxDOT study. I mean, you know, who wants to read a study on this? But this is very interesting because this has to do with a study revealing that the area known as, what people are talking about, the triangle, sort of this giant mega region with Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, needing more public transportation because of the rising populations we have seen in so many of these urban centers across this Texas triangle. So a number really to look out for here. Populations in major urban centers are expected to increase 40% by 2050. So 25 years from now, 40%. And so this TxDOT study showing that, maybe the time has come here to really bolster up public transportation. So Travis County Judge Andy Brown came out and said, quote, "I think the time has come." So really what they're looking at is a new commuter rail partnership with Bexar County. And according to Judge Brown, it could provide a critical link in the state's transit plan. He went on to say, quote, "I saw one study that showed if we did have good passenger rail between Austin and San Antonio, it would reduce I-35 traffic by 25%. I know there's a lot of people out there that hear that number and say, hey, whatever it takes to reduce traffic, I'm all on board. Our very own chief political reporter, Rudy Koski, doing this story earlier. So anything involving, I think, people getting better traffic, they're going to be okay with that. So as it stands, Amtrak is currently the only major statewide rail service in Texas. And this TxDOT study, which is actually due out by the end of the year, will offer options for a faster upgrade on the line that's owned by Union Pacific. Another idea, it says here, is to use the State Highway 130 right-of-way. A study was authorized by Travis and Bexar counties on using that route to link Austin and San Antonio, and is expected in March. Judge Brown went on to say, quote, "I think there's a lot of good creative options, and we have the opportunity here in Central Texas to show Texas and the United States how we could do that here in Texas and how we can partner and make it something that works for everybody." Sounds good on paper. We have seen this known as the high-speed fail in California, something that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, of course, has been criticized for. People believe this would be built by 2020. Some reports saying $130 billion has been put into this, and there is no operational track. Believe me, coming from California, this is something that's talked about quite often. They were promising this amazing high-speed rail. Ultimately, nothing to show for it. So always sounds good on paper, a way to reduce traffic. You want to have better public transportation, but this has failed before. So certainly a big task in front of Texas, and if it's something that they can pull off, wouldn't that be interesting with that Texas triangle, of course. Something else wanted to point out, Prop Q, of course, rejected last Tuesday on that election night. While we were talking to you guys, it was very obvious from the get-go with those early results that this thing was going to get rejected hard. I mean, 67% of people right away saying, we're not okay with this property tax. So now that the property tax has been rejected, that was going to give the city of Austin budget an additional $109 million. So, of course, with that now being rejected, they've had to go back to the drawing board, and there's going to be a budget change. And so in looking at the budget change, something really to focus on is what this means for public safety. So I'll read you what basically the EMS is coming out and saying, hey, this revised budget, we don't want this to cut into us. Got about a minute and a half left. So, of course, that revised budget, if I can pull this thing up and get rid of this thing. Nope, everything's gone. Well, anyway, the budget was $6.3 billion. That was $400 million more than the year before. This Prop Q would have been a way for them to get $109 additional dollars. That didn't go forward. So now they're having to take money away from, it looks like, public safety. And so, of course, EMS has come out and said, hey, if this isn't something that's taken care of, if you're taking money away from us, that's going to hurt everyone across the Austin area, of course, which I'm sure a lot of people don't want that to happen. So really trying to figure out how they can best budget that way. Of course, I get signed out here. See, this is the problem. I have to look at the clock. So, of course, Prop Q getting rejected. We did see, however, people saying yes in San Antonio, speaking of this Texas triangle, saying yes to the propositions down there for the Spurs arena. So people agreeing to that, people not agreeing to the property taxes here. But as I had mentioned last week, even if that didn't pass, and it didn't, people are still going to see a hit on their property taxes of roughly $109. So still going to go up from that. Once I get the more specific numbers, I'll be able to read you exactly what that was. Coming up, though, we've got our very own Marco Bittnell. He's going to talk about a part of this government shutdown, specifically with SNAP benefits, and specifically here in Austin, and what that means for the Travis County area. He'll be on in just a couple of minutes, and then after that, we're going to talk more about this government shutdown and what it means for the United States moving forward, and if we're going to see some changes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Austin Now on the Fox Local app, bringing in our very own Marco Bittenell. Of course, as we mentioned at the top of the show, something we've covered for almost 6 weeks now, this government shutdown, day 41, but the Senate voting to move this thing onto the House, and then, of course, once it passes there, on to President Trump. But people still affected by this without SNAP benefits, something you've been covering over the last couple of weeks. So a conversation I had with him was when he went out there, having to talk to people that are waiting in line to get food because, you know, they're not getting their benefits or having to go to a food bank. So if you could take us into what that experience was like from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, talking to these families that are out there, I mean, anyone that you ask are saying that the end of this government shutdown, it can't come soon enough. You know, they cannot basically almost survive, a lot of these people, without the benefits, you know, that SNAP is bringing in. And it really is heartbreaking that the last drive over in North Austin, I was talking to a young family. She had a 1-month-old baby with her.
That's right. Yeah.
And they had, I think, along with them as well, they said they had a 10, an 8-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And they said, you know, especially with the holiday season coming up, like, we don't have enough to get through the season without the SNAP benefits. Yeah, you know, the food banks can, you know, help you out to a certain degree, but even the food banks themselves are saying, you know, we're spending $2 million at a time to help, you know, support all these families across Central Texas, and we can only do that for so long. And they themselves are saying, you know, Sari Batsky, the president of the Central Texas Food Bank, saying, yeah, the community can help as much as they want, but the only thing that's going to bring this to an end is the government shutdown ending. And that's what everyone else is saying in these lines as well. It's just heartbreaking, saying I can, you know, have to decide, can I, you know, pay certain utility bills, or am I going to eat this month, you know?
Well, and the gentleman you spoke to, I think it was at the beginning of your story, which you can watch it from last week on the Fox 7 Austin website, but the gentleman, what he said to you at the beginning, I thought was really interesting. You know, this is the greatest country, but... Yeah,
you know, it really was kind of caught me off track.
Yeah.
Such almost a great soundbite.
And I think what was interesting is so many people were willing to talk to you.
It was
something you thought wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, we showed up there. I mean, and it was, the visuals for this were absolutely crazy. You know, we showed up about, you know, probably 30, 40 minutes before that food drive was set to start, and that line around the stadium over there in North Austin, wrapping into the street, it was almost impossible to get in there. Just hundreds and hundreds of cars, and you're thinking, you know, with something like this, you know, especially with someone receiving SNAP benefits, it can be maybe a subject that a lot of people don't want to make public, you know, but almost every person that we talked to out there was willing to talk, and immediately was, you know, willing to talk. And I think that just kind of shows the frustration that a lot of people,
that they had hit a breaking point.
A breaking point that says, we need people to know about this, you know, and the only way to, you know, let people know about this is how much we are, you know, suffering right now. And, you know, like that man said, the soundbite he said, you know, we're the greatest country in the world. We're sending all this money maybe overseas or doing whatever else with it. You have your own people starving right here, you know.
When you were out there, I believe you also said that maybe you weren't there when it happened, but you were told by people on site that they ultimately had to turn people away towards the end?
Yeah, and I mean, they're in Austin, and they also, that same day, they had an earlier event in Pflugerville as well. I was just, you know, having a conversation with one of the volunteers there, and they said, you know, yeah, earlier in Pflugerville, you know, typically they have, you know, about 300 people kind of show up to these drives. They doubled that. They had 600 people, and they said we had to turn people away in Pflugerville, and it was the same for that event in Austin, North Austin last week as well. They estimated they were going to serve around 1,000 people, and that was supposed to, I believe at that time, might not be fully correct, that event was scheduled to run from 5 until 7, I think. And when we were still out there getting close, you know, 6:30, there were still hundreds and hundreds of cars out there, and they said, yeah, we're turning people away now, you know.
And I know you've got an update today. His story is going to be in our 9 o'clock news coming up in about 15 minutes, so I don't want you to give away, I mean, I guess you could, but not everything, but just what's the update today? Because we were told by the Trump administration that they were going to tap into emergency funds, which is about $4.65 billion. They needed, what was it, $8 to $9 billion to cover a full month.
Full month in November, yeah.
But so they obviously didn't have enough to cover a full month. So it looks as though that people are getting partial SNAP payments. So what have you learned lately since being at the food bank?
Yeah, that's, you know, kind of been the big question is, you know, talking to those people on the line, they said, okay, we know that these partial benefits are coming out, but when are we going to get them? When can we see them? And that was questions that even officials weren't, you know, fully able to answer, saying, okay, with it only being a partial allotment, that, you know, there's going to be some backups in the system in terms of people getting this. But now we are finally receiving some confirmation. We did get in contact with the Texas Health and Human Services Office. They did pretty limited in the information they were able to share with us at this time, but they basically were saying that if you are a SNAP recipient and you usually receive those benefits on the 1st through the 10th of every month, that you will receive a partial payment today on their Lone Star cards. Now, in terms of how much that payment is going to look like, that is still very unclear. There's been varying reports of how much people are getting in terms of what they would usually receive. But if you're one of those people who say, hey, maybe I typically don't get my payments from the 1st to the 10th, if you're one of those other people, the 11th and afterwards, well, you should receive it on your normal issuing date. That's what they're saying, at least right now.
And when you've gone through these stories and talking to the people, I know some people have talked to you off camera, maybe not everyone's been interviewed, but just what have you noticed when you're out there, and kind of give us the overall, I guess, vibe of the situation and what you see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is just a lot of, like we said, it is frustration.
Right.
People are, I think, just mainly a lot of frustration just from the federal level as well. That saying people are saying that how has it come to this, to where they are having to wait hours and hours in a food drive from a nonprofit. That's how they're getting there's no other, once these SNAP benefits are cut off, there's no other help from the government, and they're having to rely on these nonprofits. And it wasn't just that one car that we stopped with that had the kids in them. You looked probably almost every other car you looked in there was families in there, kids in the back seat, and it was a lot of frustration from these parents that were just saying it has to come to this, that this is quite literally the only way that I can put food on the table. I mean, and just adds extra pressure as well when you have the holiday season as well, especially with Thanksgiving just weeks away.
Right.
Just an extra
air travel, food, and we've got so many things coming up in just about 2 weeks here for Thanksgiving. If you're just joining us, of course, the Senate voting to pass a deal that would open up the government. It has been 41 days. That now goes to the House. Once that passes there, which by all accounts it will, then it'll go on to President Trump's desk, and of course opening this government up until January 30th. So 6 weeks of this going on. Marco's been covering SNAP benefits. His story will be in our 9 o'clock. Of course, you can watch it live right here on the Fox Local app, or you can just tune into Fox 7. Before I let you go, though, have you seen the new Frankenstein?
I'm not. You were talking to me about it yesterday. You said I need to get out there and
I know a lot of people here were talking about it as well. The funny thing is, I haven't finished it because it's so long.
Is that
yeah, handsome guy. He's like 6'5".
Anything that dude's in, it's gonna succeed. Okay,
he looks great. Yeah,
you say he'd literally be Frankenstein. And
yeah,
you're gonna have people glued to that.
Yeah, the monster. Yeah, he apparently was in a makeup for 10 hours at some times. Waiting to get on. So yeah, pretty interesting movie. It's on Netflix. I got kicked out of my Netflix on the TV, so I'll have to finish it on my phone for tonight. But
okay, finish it on the clock here.
Yeah, I'll finish on the clock here. Marco, thanks for joining us. Of course, you can watch this story coming up in just about 10 minutes from now. We're going to take our final break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about this government shutdown and what it means for you out there. Welcome back again to Austin Now, live on the Fox Local app. We are coming at you from the Fox 7 Austin newsroom. Final segment of the show here on this Monday. A very busy Monday. In the last 30 minutes or so, we got wind that the federal government is on its way back to reopening after 41 days of being shut down. This began on October 1st. And I remember being here, and we were waiting for it to shut down because we knew that it was heading that direction. It's hard to believe it's been 41 days since that time. We've been trying to follow this thing every step of the way, covering everything from air travel to SNAP benefits to what this means for federal workers. A lot of people interested in knowing what's next. So we look to have a better picture of what's going on. So the Senate passed that funding package 60-40 in favor. That in part to 8 Democrats joining Republicans, going across the aisle, of course. Many people upset with the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer from New York for fighting this whole time and saying they wanted the Obamacare subsidies taken care of and extended. We don't know if that's going to happen, so a lot of people saying, hey, what was the point of making this drag out for so long, people not getting paid, people not getting SNAP benefits, people wondering what's going on next, people getting delayed at airports. Are they going to see their families on Thanksgiving? Is this thing going to go into Christmas? So just a lot of frustrated people out there. As we know right now, the bill would fund most government operations through January 30th of next year. That includes some full-year appropriations for key departments like agriculture and Veterans Affairs. Of course, it now goes to the House of Representatives and then to President Trump's desk. Now, as I just mentioned, a little bit ago, it does not guarantee an extension of the health care subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, that many Democrats have been demanding. Something that we talked about with Texas Democrat Lloyd Doggett, who was in here from the House of Representatives, of course, on Friday. This was his primary concern, something that was brought up. He believed that there could be conversations about this, but he said for 6 weeks the House was not convening, they were not talking, they were not negotiating, and he believed that President Trump was going to have to get involved. But at that time, when we were talking to Congressman Doggett, he didn't know or foresee 8 Democrats going over to join the Republicans. So a lot changed about 48 hours after that. Certainly it looks like, on the tail end of this thing. Now, something we haven't talked about in this show, but something we've talked about over the last couple of weeks is air travel being a major concern. We've heard from the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, just about every day regarding this. So I want to read something that President Trump, wasn't a tweet, it was a Truth Social post earlier today, really sort of calling out air traffic controllers. So I'll read you. It's a bit long, but bear with me here. So he posted this on Truth Social. This was this morning. He said, quote, "All air traffic controllers must get back to work now," all caps, 3 exclamation marks. "Anyone who doesn't will be substantially," quote, "docked. For those air traffic controllers who were great patriots," all caps, "and didn't take any time off for the," quote, "Democrat shutdown hoax, I will be recommending a bonus of $10,000 per person for distinguished service to our country for those that did nothing but complain and took time off, even though everyone knew they would be paid in full," all caps, "shortly into the future. I am not happy with you. You didn't step up to help the USA against the fake Democrat attack that was only meant to hurt our country. You will have a negative mark, at least in my mind, against your record. If you want to leave service in the near future, please do not hesitate to do so. With no payment or severance of any kind, you will be quickly replaced by true patriots who will do a better job on the brand new state-of-the-art equipment, the best in the world, that we are in the process of ordering. The last," quote, "administration wasted billions of dollars trying to fix antiquated junk they had no idea they were doing. Again, to our great American patriots, God bless you. I won't be able to send your money fast enough. To all others, report to work immediately. God bless America, President Donald J. Trump." So quite the post there from President Trump, calling out air traffic controllers, really getting upset at those who did not show up to work for not getting paid. He then said that those who did were great patriots. Those who weren't would be replaced by better patriots. He then went on to say this was a fake Democrat attack. He also called the entire thing a, quote, "Democrat shutdown hoax." So, of course, a lot of air traffic controllers not getting paid over this course of time. I think it was $13,000 at one point. So I want to read you something from the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy. He also then calls out Pete Buttigieg, who was the guy he replaced, of course. So Pete Buttigieg then responds to this saying, the president wouldn't last 5 minutes as an air traffic controller. And after everything they've been through and the way this administration has treated them from day one, he has no business, quote, blanking on them now. Defecating, if you will. I can't say the real word. So then Sean Duffy responds to that, and you've got your classic Twitter drama here, which is always fun. He says to Pete Buttigieg, give me a break. You were basically AWOL at the DOT. I spend my whole day dealing with your neglect and cleaning up your messes. Sit this one out. I got 2.1 million views. So some issues between the transportation secretaries, of course. We know that this has ramped up over the course of time. You know, it started with limited capacity, and this could only get worse. But it looks like if everything goes according to plan with the government opening up again, hopefully we will see air travel get back to normal. But I know it's been difficult for a lot of people out there. Of course, many wondering, you know, is this going to impact our Thanksgiving week? Are we going to be able to fly in somewhere, fly out of somewhere? Tons of delays. I mean, just today, based on FlightAware, more than 10,000 that we're talking about here. So just a nightmare for so many airports and so many people traveling across the country. But hopefully, if all things go as planned, it looks like the government will reopen again, and that will be the case, funding it through January 30th. But as Speaker Mike Johnson said earlier today, no guarantee they will talk about those Obamacare subsidies. That has been such a pressure point for everyone involved. And Chuck Schumer continuing to say he's going to vote no. Bernie Sanders, same thing. So the people going on the Republican side, many people thinking, hey, why'd you waste our time dealing with this for 41 days? So a lot to digest. We'll see what ends up happening tomorrow. Coming up in the 9 o'clock show, we've got more on Ferry Alley. We've also got more on Marco's story. So Katie will have the Ferry Alley story. Marco will have the SNAP food bank help. Mike will talk more about the government shutdown. And then we've got more coming up with flight delays to update you guys on. So thanks for joining us on this Monday. We'll see you tomorrow night.